So what kind of risk could be, I mean, either avoided or associated with how you kind of release these updates? What kind of best practices should be considered? I think we've talked
Yeah,
about, different products, different geographies, friendly customers or critical business critical customers. What type of, strategies can be considered when you're going through this type of process?
yeah. I had some thoughts around this, and the three we've got here are by no means an exhaustive list, right? There's lots of things in between, and the reality is you might use a bit of everything, right? A little bit of a kind of mix.
Hmm.
The lying, thought is that you've got to reduce risk and you've got to increase success and you've got to reduce stress and you've got to bring stability. That's why you're doing updates. You're updating for a technical reason, you're updating for a functionality reason. You might be trying to pull users out of an old version that you really desperately want to end of life as a company because it's costing you loads to maintain it. And it's not just cost, but it may well be, the classic was everyone went from 32-bit to 64-bit, right? And we still work with clients now and then who, so more in the application packaging space, they have an app that's like a 32-bit app used for some curious business need, right? So sometimes you have to do a bit of a mix of these. Certainly, what you don't do is you don't fire and forget, as we said earlier. um, you don't do big bang, right? Because that's just fraught with risk. It's very expensive, very slow, and well, how do you come out of that? The classic is really a mixture, I would say, of the first two. So the shadow deployment. You know the environment into which this update or patch or upgrade is going. To a certain degree, you'll know that. You're not driving along in the fog. Um, you might mix it with a limited release. As we said earlier, I think we touched on, you might pick a particular geography or particular user base that's slightly more manageable rather than throwing it all out there. But there's all kinds of considerations like timing. Right? If this is a global piece of software, when is the right time? We talk about this all the time, and it's usually not a Monday or a Friday, right? And certainly these days, with people's kind of not everyone's really back in the office 5 days a week, but a lot of people are in the middle of the week, and it gives you that ability to, you know, Microsoft do Patch Tuesday for a reason, and again, that's probably another discussion for another day. In that, one of the points we touched on earlier is auto updates. The auto update option in Microsoft, your software can
Hmm.
have the same, it will have the same. Um, that's an important toggle to consider because the minute you're giving an auto update ability, you're turning off your ability as a vendor or an IT team to do any of these things because that update goes straight through. Right. So that's where there's got to be a liaison between really the product development team, the product managers, and the marketing team, right, and the business, and to know the audience. So the one I
Yeah, I
didn't
mean that
touch
can
on
be
is
a
the
huge value add.
yeah,
If
I think it
there's
can.
like what about so different, like you need to be in office to get an update versus remote, right? That's part of that
Yeah,
planning, right? Is to know, hey, when do I need to be connected to the internet or I need to be on, the corporate network to get the update for security reasons, for whatever other things. That's all, those are considerations to take in mind when planning, yeah.
I've seen that actually. I've seen it where it was more back in the day when people physically connected their machine with an Ethernet cable. You probably remember.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, the corporate office will have a set of IP addresses, and you'll know what they are, and that won't be the same if you're at home or in a hotel. And so actually, updates starting to take environmental factors into account. Am I on Wi-Fi? Am I on battery? It's a big update. Am I on the battery of the laptop? Because if I am, I might not want to start this 2 GB update. Um, so a mixture of all three of those approaches, but what I am seeing more is the ability to take into account the environment. And to one of your points earlier about virtual environments, that's obviously a big thing now, right? Is this virtually run? Because there might be different considerations, whether it's we're in a virtual environment, which may be better or worse, depending on the software, especially if it's a client server piece of software, because it may well have a load of clients connecting to it. So the fact your update takes you 10 minutes and disconnects the network to doing a driver update might not be that good.